Guten Morgen, hier sind Katrin und James aus dem Ufersraum. Wir haben vor Bodenkontakt gerade auf die Fernsteuerung umgestellt und wir sind jetzt dabei. For James and me, it's a second dive within the last 8 hours. We are here on inactive, very old volcanic structure at 52 degrees north, 39 degrees west, to the western side of the. And what you see here in the water column is a constant stream of zooplankton, of amphipods, of loads of copepods, of salps, of heterognathes, and everybody who says that plankton is only existing in the upper 1,000 meters of the water column needs to watch a benthic dive of imagery equipment so that they actually will see that the plankton goes down continuously to the seafloor. Rotating, we will go over and over the same piece of seafloor again. You will realize, you start to recognize the different structures potentially. It might be the same stone, the same starfish. Who knows what we are seeing when we arrive. And after everything is set, James will communicate with the bridge and ask the officer on the watch to start moving the vessel with a constant speed. And then 3 hours later, our 1.5 miles will be done. The vessel will stop again. When everything is stopped and the OFA system isn't towed, it will be winched back onto the vessel and we continue. And that will be in 4 and a bit hours time, which then means for James and me, who have worked through the first dive, had a break, had a nap, and are now back, we will have a long sleep after that.
Oh yes. We sleep time before we run our other gears in the evening or / early morning on the following day.
Yeah.
Myself with the large popcorn and yourself with EBS.
Yep. Yeah, Steffi was saying she might run both of the EBSs depending on when we finish here and when the EBS is coming in. Oh, bottom. We have bottom view. Wäre ein Hartsubstrat. Denn das würde das Beproben mit greifenden Geräten unterbinden. Our colleagues who have started waking up is wrong. It's 20 to 9 on board. They can't watch. They had breakfast because I saw Marco at breakfast at 7 o'clock. Breakfast started.
Yeah, Tim was there as well.
Yeah, they were now waiting for the camera, the image you can see live on the live stream, to be transmitted into the conference room. If it's not working, it's after 8 o'clock and we're in before, so they have their kind of, I guess, normal working times, despite the fact that they were up working until 11 at night yesterday when we deployed the first OFOS to make sure that all the electronic and systems are working, especially as we changed the camera and the flash system between the last and this camera, so a few of the setting had to be changed. And what are we seeing on the image? Well, we see our three laser dots. Our three laser dots for the ones that haven't joined the other two dives and already know the answer are 18 centimeters and 18 distant from each other, which gives us an idea on the sizes of the objects we see on the seafloor, and also it means that what we can view here is about 1.20 meters in height and 3.5 meters in length. At the top right we see a sea pen sticking out.
We're off. So far, this is the snapshot of the sediment is what we were probably expecting after our dive earlier today. Soft sediment mixed in with some small pebbles.
Yeah. And a couple of round, not too big sponges, which might be collected at the front of the epibentic sledge when we troll it around, but we have a metal grid in front of the samplers so that sponges of more items of more than 4 or 5 centimeters don't go in and clog the really fine nets, but can be kept outside of the EBS samplers and often come up onto deck with it.
It's interesting, the EBS keeps developing and developing, and every piece has a reason behind it. And probably our Ice Age RR cruise, where we got lots of large sponges stuck and clogging the nets, was one of the reasons that we were asked to build that grate.
Yeah, it wasn't there.
It wasn't.
I think
there.
it was left home. Oh, here we have a Sepunculate Lebensspur looking like a flower with a central little dip, and then the Sepunculate feeding trace comes out. Hier in der Bildmitte sehen wir gerade die Lebensspur eines Sepunkloiden, eines Igelwurms, der in dieser Höhle sitzt und seine Filterorgane, eine lange Schnur, die dann sich V-förmig spaltet, ausfährt, um das Sediment auszufressen. Der Rest wird dann ausgeschieden. Da kommen dann auch einige der kleinen Kothaufen her, die wir am Meeresboden sehen. Die typischen großen Kothaufen, die man in der Tiefsee häufig sieht, werden von Seegurken hergestellt, ausgeschieden. Those starfish.
As the proverbial point of them burying themselves in.
Yeah, or being half buried, sitting like that, and
Yeah.
then when they move away, they would leave that imprint.
Yeah.
On the expedition Ice Age 3 last year, we saw similar to 2,700 meters. One of them are the hermit crabs, and the second one are the gastropods that were around and provided the shells for the hermit crabs. What is also not seen yet, but we are only a few minutes into the dive, is the presence of the Galaceid crab, where we had quite a high number. And you see the difference between the really white taken in and collected sediment, where the green fluffy layer has been removed by the underlying ichthyoreed who's feeding on it.
Anything to be left over stalks or something.
Yeah.
So that's why I tend to agree with you.
was wir gerade diskutiert haben, waren diese etwa vielen regelmäßig angebauten schwarzen Steinchen, die aussehen wie eine von einem Tier geformte Röhre. Und James und ich kamen zu der ziemlich sicher sind wir uns, dass der Bruthaufen rechts von der Holoturia, von der Seegurke stammt. Aber da haben wir auch noch keine gesehen.
Not at the moment.
Ja. Und das, wo unser Sichtfeld 3 Meter Breite beträgt.
Da sieht man aber auch solche kleinen Erhebungen.
Ja.
Das aussieht, als wenn das ein Tier gekrochen hätte.
So, Ollie, our winch driver, just commented on the little knolls and hills we can see, and a lot of those are filled by worm-like animals. I say worm-like animals because this is like the ichthyoreed sipunculites, and
Here compared to our previous dive at the higher or lesser depths.
yes, the last dive we had 2 types of irregular sea urchins, one more heart-shaped urchin that was greenish yellow in color, about 5 centimeters, and quite often we could see its moving trace behind the animal. And then we had a quite large, up to 20-25 centimeter diameter, round, reddish, irregular put out of its chest. It's collapsing. It doesn't have the big, solid, calcified plates of the edible sea urchins. And they were quite common on the last dives, or we regularly saw it. We even saw one
Of those white.
there's another.
Be interesting to see if one of those comes
Yeah,
up.
and it moves. It has a movement. Our Norwegian colleague Anne Helene sent us. Them not only to make them hold onto the seafloor, but also to move them around. So it's the same that shows that time-lapse cameras give us a lot of information. We have the first holosaurian in it. Movement trace.
Yeah, and that's the one that sticks.
Yeah. So when I was a student in my first lectures 30 years ago, we learned that there are sessile and mobile animals, and it was like sessile animals are sea anemones and
Sponges.
barnacles,
Yeah.
sponges, some like the blue mussels. Now we know that all of these animals are able to actively move. schöne der roten Tiefseegarnelen.
A lot more Lebensspur in comparison with actual visible animals, which would suggest a lower sedimentation rate in this area.
Yeah. And when I hear crinoids and we see the odd one sticking out of the fine sediment here, I think about the discovery they did in Yorkshire? I think it was in Yorkshire in the UK in the last summer, where a couple of keen fossil hunters, but volunteer amateurs that are also trained by the National. So, die erste Seegurke, eine rote große Seegurke. We had the first big Hosurian that made the poo marks earlier, and I was stopped and discussing the find of the crinoid beds from the Jurassic or Cretaceous time in crinoiden Seelilienbett entdeckt, wo sie bis zu 100 Seelilien in der ähnlichen Größe wie die wir hier sehen, hatten, und sie gehen davon aus, dass es ein flaches Flussdelta war. Those, as James said, seem to have a low disturbance in sedimentation rate. We see several mounds sticking up that are formed by crinoid. Uns, wie unterschiedlich und unbekannt die Diversität und Lebensgemeinschaften in der Tiefsee noch sind.
Our on-board PhD student Angela Heister will be particularly happy to see that.
Or perhaps from the night time there was more movement, or the gulls eat decapods.
Very different movements, but
Oh,
I don't know whether it's something burrowing, like you're saying, and then using that as a place to remove the sediment.
Seapen. We had our email addresses, but all emails would arrive as one long email once or twice a day by the radio officer, were printed out and laid out, and you would then pick up your piece of paper with your email. Now we all have our individual emails and no chance to read somebody else's or pick one up by incident. And now we even are able to communicate with modern technologies like WhatsApps, because it's a very fast and very low frequency or low megabyte or byte system to get information from a.
Yes, especially on this last trip with the increased bandwidth that we've managed to get to be able to do these live streams, running WhatsApp group on board to be able to disseminate information.
Stalked crinoid, so we have the two different types of crinoids in the system here.
Yes, we also saw the unstalked variety in our guide earlier this morning, but not the stalked version.
James, what is it what you would love to see on this dive? What would be the biggest possible surprise? Our corals, which we know we can get on reef structures, but not in a sedimented area.
Yeah, one of the most interesting things.
Nothing else. Well, we have seafloor and rocks and the Arctic crinoid to talk about.
I mean, the classic one is, of course, the whale food form, which then provides a lot of extra food material into the environment. Those lines, of course, is always of interest.
Yeah.
And yourself?
Well, a football, a whale fall would be a highlight. On 2 expeditions where we discovered whale falls, especially one where we had an RV and were able to study a whale fall, which was in a very decayed stage, so we only had the whale bones left. But we had all these endemic whale fall fauna and isopods that were specialized on feeding on the whale bones and the remaining oils in it, and different snails, limpet snails feeding on the whale bone, so that was exciting. But if you have on Novus transect, it might be very exciting for a few seconds and then you have left it. Directly along the transect. You might be able to see it for a minute or two. But when I base what I would like to see on the dive, I take it together with the dive we had earlier. We had at 2,400 meters quite often some deep sea fish of different macroids and a very beautiful excuse me, had seen and photographed a quite large unidentified where the head between the distance of the eyes is about 40 centimeters in size. So that's a quite large sized deep sea shark. The zone is not far away from where we are here, and definitely in the swimming distance, an area that could make. So if they occur there, they could occur here.
And as you said, we've already seen eggs from them potentially, so they're in the area.
Yeah, so rays and sharks are in the area and are able to survive on the seafloor.
But as quite solitary animals, it can be difficult to spot them and be lucky enough to find them in our track with our approximately at this altitude 3.5 meter glimpse of the seafloor.
Yeah. The Eco crews used some baited trap landers which had cameras which they dropped down from the vessel to the seafloor, left for a few hours and then picked up again, and it was photos of these baited traps. Dead fish that was recently dead on the seafloor on the early dive that looked like untouched by anybody. So this makes you think we in total saw traces of fire. We had 2 macroids.
Yeah, the fish density is definitely a lot lower. The overall density is a lot lower than the dive swarm.
So James und ich haben gerade darüber diskutiert, was wir auf diesem Tauchgang gerne sehen würden, was ein Highlight wäre, möglich wäre im Rahmen der Möglichkeiten eines Tauchgangs auf 3700 Meter. Und James sagte, er würde gerne einen Nahrungsfall sehen und der auf dem Meeresboden absinkt und dann sich über Jahre oder Monate bis Jahre zersetzt und ein Nahrung, wirklich Aas fressen und aktiv das Fleisch herausfressen würden, bis zum Schluss, wenn das Tier zerfallen ist, bis auf die Knochen noch viele Öle und andere Nahrungsstoffe, die dann aus einer sehr spezialisierten Fauna aufgenommen werden. Es gibt eine Wurmgruppe, die sich die Walknochen fressenden Würmer nennt, Also sowas wäre schon begeisternd. Ich sagte, mich würde es freuen, einen der Besitzer der Rochen- oder Haieier zu sehen, die wir auf 2700 Meter im Tauchgang heute Morgen hatten. Das zeigt uns ja, dass diese Fische in dieser Umgebung sind. Und dass dort einer kommen würde und bei uns ins Bild reinschwimmen würde, wäre schon ein Highlight. Aber ich freue mich auch über jede Einsiedlerkrebse. Jeden Einsiedlerkrebs. So I also like to see every hermit crab.
Shell as their home.
It might be the only shell that is around. I haven't seen the form is the same in all of them. Would give a base for it. But this is definitely the gear, and
without a shadow.
It's the right place for us.
Based on the backscatter and what we know about the area and the age, but you never quite know, especially with these old bogs. It is all built on hard substrate. If it's a fast current system, it can still be very much hard substrate. But this should hopefully, touch wood, yield some really nice results with the other benthic gears in the coming day and a half. After this, we will deploy the Neuston catamaran to sample plastics of the water surface and pollutants of the water surface.
And the animals of the water surface.
Yeah, and the surface plankton as well.
So that we see the surface floating.
It's very true.
Plastic.
We will then go into our 20-core multiple core. One-third of our dive so far.
So to attract our youngest generations, I'm nowadays amazed how much young children, even in primary school age or nursery, fantastic. So when you now go to outreach events, and I have a couple of Yeti crabs from the hydrothermal vents in resin that I take with me, so they send it out and you can actually touch, well, you touch the resin that the animal is in, but you can see it, turn it around and see it. And while the parents don't know what it is, all the youngsters do know, and they come and say like, this is a Yeti crab. And I go, yes, you're right. And the parents look, how do you know? And the answer is the octonauts. So this is how children comic series can actually influence the next generation's knowledge and appreciation of the deep sea.
It's interesting to think that these team of consultant specialists will be able to give the right information, whereas in previous generations, it's just like, not sure it has to be 100% correct.
How the older ones with nectons, the absolute high-tech underwater technology with the different submarines and diving suits. You have animals that you find in search based on real ones, but so clearly not real. It's for the slightly older children. You can tell, I think, by this that I have a child that was well into octonauts and nectons. And when he's grown up, at present is interested in becoming the seafloor or the water column and help scientists to learn more about the global ocean.
Following a little bit in his mother's footsteps, but very much in his father's.
Definitely. The time I want to be an artist drawing deep sea animals are past. Oh, is that litter? The
that
blue.
Could be litter. That's not a natural colour.
That's not a natural. Well,
yeah.
if we think about the Neuston amphipods, the Neuston animals, they
yeah. But
would
it's hard
be.
to explain. You just get a feeling for it sometimes when you've seen so much of it. But
Yeah.
you're right. To go on colour alone is a mistake. Some of those blue copepods that are swimming around the Neuston catamaran, like they've been stained for microscope work.
Ja. Soeben hatten wir dieses leuchtend blaue Stück unidentifiziert auf dem Meeresboden, das James und ich als Verschmutzung, als vielleicht Plastiktüte eingeloggt haben. Wir sagten, die blaue Farbe ist nicht sehr natürlich für ein Meeresbodentier. Wenn wir den Neuston, vorhin hat James über den Neuston-Katamaran geredet und Tiere im Neuston sind häufig blau. Wir hatten auf der letzten Expedition blaue Kopepoden, blaue Garnelen, blaue Nacktschnecken. Es war im Neuston eigentlich alles blau. Wir haben die blauen Quallen, die Velella oder die spanischen Galeeren, die an der Meeresoberfläche treiben, doch eher tiefrot sind. Die Fische sind lila, die Seegurken sind lila-rot. Also es sind andere Farben, die in der Tiefsee vorherrschen.
Interesting with our other gear to see if the macro fauna mirrors that of the mega epifauna and in low quantities.
Yes.
They can often mirror each other. However, macrofauna is a lot more sensitive than the epibenthic megafauna to individual patches and patchiness over a much smaller distribution range.
Yeah.
But what is clear is that greenish overlay is still very much there.
Yeah, there's not much feeding on it.
It'll be interesting to see what bacterial communities in the area as well.
The mucors and the analysis of the mucors by Ellie and others will tell.
Some of that will be done before we even get back to Germany, as we have 2 fully working genetic labs on board. One for eDNA filtration and one for the other actual extractions and genetic work.
Yeah. Just the white.
So, shell of some variety.
Yes.
That level of reflection. regular snail shape though.
No, broken up.
Yeah, or broken up or discarded bivalve or
Yeah. There was another thing on the dead fish we saw. There were no bacterial mats around them. Often in the aura area around a dead fish you would have white bacterial Veggiatoa-like mats.
often one of the first organisms to help colonize.
Ja. Ja. Wir sprechen gerade darüber, verschiedene kleine Hartkorallen, Tiefwasserkorallen, die auf einem Stein saßen. Ja, James und ich sprachen darüber, dass wir keine Art und den Bakteriengemeinschaften forschen. Was uns dann aufgefallen war auf dem vorherigen Tauchgang war, dass sich um die Tod verschiedenen Verwesungsstadien waren, wir keine Bakterienmatten auf ihn oder um sie herum gefunden hatten. A little jellyfish and the shadow made by our lights.
Of which we have 4 LED lamps on board. As well as 2 flash bulbs for the still imagery that you'll see triggering every 10 seconds.
Another starfish imprint. We're definitely having more large starfish here than we had in the shallower dive.
Certainly traces of the starfish.
Yeah. But we had more big holosaurians on this dive so far than on the upper one. So it's clearly a different faunal assemblage.
Yeah. Different, not yet, but not completely different. It's more quantity based or proportion of.
And here we have these little balls, mud balls. The question is, are they made by those amphipods that was suggested yesterday?
Possibly. Or are they the sediment that's coming out from that central of the bump for whoever's living in there clearing it out?
Yep.
That's the thing, we do these dives to try and answer many questions, but it also leaves us with many more.
Yep. So from the Lebensspuren paper, from the porcupine abyssal plain that I'm comparing our ones with, I have a little dip full of little balls and it says indeterminate origin. So
yeah, I think that paper highlights quite a few of indeterminate origin. You often see these patterns on the seafloor, but it's hard to see the culprits doing it and catching them in the act.
Yeah. For that you would need to have a camera filming for a longer time,
Yeah.
or sitting with an RV for quite a while.
But these patterns do reoccur, so it's clearly something making it, just being there at the right time to be able to see it happen.
Braucht ihr irgendwas? Yeah, we just had our colleague Karen coming in asking whether James and I wanted a coffee. It's almost 5 to 10 and 10 o'clock is coffee time, morning coffee at sea. So it's really nice that we're not forgotten, well looked after. Well,
Karen's one of the many members of the technical assistants we have on board who make the lives of the scientists so much easier by running so much behind the scenes that goes unnoticed by too many people, and we are very thankful to have them all on board.
yeah. Oh yes, Karen has one of the most important jobs on board. She runs the Access database. So every sample we get on board is being logged in duplicate ways so that we can find it back, know what it is, know when it was taken, where it was taken, and who borrowed it. So they can all be traced. And that's something that has come into biodiversity research more and more, that you need to trace the specimens you have collected in the past and have a list on what was collected so that international efforts can be shared and not duplicated. So Karen, die Technikerin an Bord, die eben reinkam und fragte, ob wir ein Frühstück, so einen Morgenkaffee haben wollen, hat eine der wichtigsten Aufgaben an Bord. Sie betreut die Probendatenbank, die in Access geführt wird, in der jede Probe, die an Bord geht, aufgeführt wird. Wenn wir Proben unterteilen, werden sie neu mit neuen Nummern versehen, sodass jede Probe von ihrem Sammelort zurückverfolgt werden kann, bis dahin, dass sie rausgeschickt wurde zu internationalen Kollegen zur Bearbeitung, aber auch der internationalen Gemeinschaft zur Verfügung steht, damit diese wissen, welche Tiere wurden wann, wo gesammelt und man dann eventuell nicht wieder in dasselbe Gebiet fährt, um dort nochmal zu sammeln, sondern in ein Gebiet fährt, das noch unerforscht ist. Pattern that is real ends with a Lebensspur behind it, so it's something living in it that is pulling it along, but we don't know who it sits in it. Hopefully we can collect one in the EBS.
Yeah, that would be interesting, because right now I'm picturing something that it purely can't be, sort of out, that has this outside case that it lives in and then goes on like that.
Yeah. Or It's one of the round sponges.
It's one of the round sponges. That's maybe the part that I've been surprised of so far. We haven't seen more of those, based on that we saw them in the increased depth last time.
Yes.
Admittedly, in the central part of the volcano, it is kind of a specialist environment.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And not at 2,650. I expected them to reach down to here.
But our EBS team are probably quite happy that there's not going to be many sponges clogging the net.
No. And the they again seem to be
Smooth one tends to be, it looks
I actually wonder if the whole historians are on a light avoidance tactic.
This is of course possible. It's been much up for debate when you use such a camera system whether the light attracts certain species or repulses them, and how much you get a true snapshot. For predatory hunters, the light obviously is a draw because you can see, or they can then have a glimpse of what they're trying to hunt. But if you're the prey, you want to get away from that.
Wir haben gerade, James und ich haben diskutiert, ob die Holothurien, von denen wir ja eindeutig ihre Kotspuren sehen und auch in einer größeren Anzahl, aber ganz wenig lebende Individuen, ob die vielleicht aktiv dem Licht ausweichen. Wir wissen nicht, ob sie Licht, Helligkeit wahrnehmen können. Magst du Karren? Dankeschön. Bitteschön. Karen hat gerade festgestellt, dass man unsere Sortierwannen auch als Tablett für 2 Kaffeetassen auf einmal verwenden kann. Und wie in einem Café mit einem Keks zur Seite gelegt. Vielen Dank. Ja. Okay. Und hier haben wir eine rote Garnele. Mal eine Abwechslung. Eine Anemone. So we have a burrowing anemone not being walked away by one of the hermit crabs. What we will do with several of these species that we have photographed, or we can see on the photographs taken of these dives, we will place them into the North Atlantic imagery database, and they will get a number, because with a lot of the species we don't know the species name, we don't know the genus name, so they might get the name of Cnidaria or Actinaria spec 1, 2, 3, so that when you go out for the next expedition you can compare your images against the known species, or even the unknown species. Oh, we have a large white snail on the top, the round white blob. Ja, all unsere Fotos von Tieren, die hier in der Tiefsee leben, werden an die internationale Fotodatenbank oder nordatlantische Fotodatenbank abgegeben, sodass man dann zählen kann, wie viele unterschiedliche Arten es gibt, selbst wenn man sie nicht zur Art bestimmen kann oder zur Gattung bestimmen kann, dass man doch weiß, welche verschiedenen Morphotypen an Seeanemonen oder Seelilien es gibt. Und wenn man dann das nächste Mal auf Expedition fährt, kann man diesen Katalog mitnehmen und vielleicht schon einschränken, ob man eine schon mal gesichtete Art hat oder etwas Neues. No. With the question on if they are drop stones, as this could be an iceberg alley or iceberg ray, all melted and losing off like drop stones. And we were discussing whether this could be in the vicinity where the Titanic sunk, but according to the Wikipedia site, Titanic was on 41 north 43 minutes and 49 west 56, which had been on the track of our initially planned expedition route if the winter storms of the Atlantic wouldn't have pushed us further to the east. So given we are here on 52 north, 39 west, we are still too far north and too far east. But I don't doubt the dropstone theory. And it's the right depth. The Titanic lies in 3,803 meters, so it is almost in the same depth zone that we are currently working on, but just in a very different area of the Atlantic. But this is something where, when James and I talked about highlights or unpredictable, you could always stumble across a wreck of a vessel from very old times before positions were recorded.
All the way from a shipwreck to a modern day container.
Very good point, James. The modern day containers. Because container vessels in big storms do lose containers, unfortunately, which then float around in the ocean and sink to the seafloor at one point. And that would be an interesting study area for the litter map. Do we know of positions of containers in the deep sea? Have they been found once? Are there records? I don't know.
There are records of containers that have been found in the deep sea and such things. It's just more about coming together as a scientific community to be able to share those and make those publicly available.
Ja, wir haben gerade besprochen, dass ein Kollege sagt, es könnte sein, dass er vermutet, dass die Steine, die wir hier sehen, nicht vollständig aus dem Ursprung der Lava sind, sondern hier runtergefallen sind. Und der Name, wenn wir wussten, auf unserer original geplanten Route wären wir in dem Gebiet der Titanic vorbeigekommen. Jetzt sind wir aber durch den Sturm oder die Stürme, die Sturmtiefs weiter nach Osten gefahren, östlicher. Aber das brachte die Diskussion dahin, dass man nie weiß, was man findet, dass man auch über unbekannte Schiffswracks stolpern könnte bei einer Erprobung, wie wir es gemacht haben. Ein bisschen unwahrscheinlich, sich dann mit der Zeit mit Wasser füllen und zum Meeresboden absinken. Und man weiß nie, wann man an einen solchen Container trifft. Wir haben keine Ahnung, wenn die Container halb abgesunken sind, den tiefer weiß man dort schon eher. Da ist wieder 2 meiner. Eine Holoturie.
Another is the same species we've been finding. Pinky purple we see at the porcupine abyssal plain.
Yeah. And these are the sediment feeding holosaurians, not the filter feeding holosaurians.
Yeah.
And another stick.
Yeah, I really hope we sample some of those. Because they're very abundant and I'd be very interested to see what either creates them or what they're composed of. If it is a tube, well, it might be very difficult to sample the whole animal because it likely extends a long way under the sediment surface and it'll get retracted down to rebuild again. But
Yeah, but I doubt it now, because we've seen several of those and they are lying flat on the sand.
I
They
agree.
don't stick up.
Yeah.
That's the point. And we have a Lebensspur behind being reused by somebody.
The size 0 hermit crabs.
Exactly, James. I was thinking of dragging along a very heavy house. front of your double-sized motor van, trailer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, motorhome. That's
Caravan.
Caravan is the word. Und da liegt wieder einer vor uns gerade. Man sieht, dass sie bewegt werden. Und James' Idee war dann, dass dort ein von den kleinen Einsiedlerkrebsen sitzt, der dann sehr stark sein muss, um dieses lang. Und wieder unsere Mulde mit den Kugeln. Almost like Easter eggs, wrong time of the year.
But there's a few around a mound again, sort of literally.
Mm. And barely any fish.
Really, the fish density compared to the last area is much lower. We zoomed out, you can see 5, 6, 7 fish at a time sometimes. But yeah, they're not showing any interest if they are in the area. But perhaps that comes from, in the last place we had a larger size of rock in some places. And when we had these mermaid bursts there, perhaps they were then used in some form of nursery mode or natural shelter.
Yeah. Pagurus pubescens, let's see.
those in the last few
Yes.
minutes. But without anemones.
Yeah. Oops. Little
Yeah.
red. Another, the red color, the man-made piece.
Metal object.
In our little protocol, we have color-coded the different sightings. So anything that is a biocomplex related to a living feature, so like if we have problems with the vehicle or the software, or we change the, oh, we have a watch change button. I was typing those.
And that will allow us to our trash map
Yeah.
that we presented during the UN Ocean Decade Satellite event.
Yeah, definitely an improvement to the handwritten protocol and the Holothurian. You sometimes had more detailed notes. What is sitting on the top? Is it a deep sea octopus? Yes,
That's a
we have a
deep sea
Dumbo octopus.
Yeah. So, what could that potentially have been, a brooding deep sea Dumbo octopus?
I don't know.
Or could have just been sleeping?
Or sitting on something it's feeding on.
Or sitting on something it's feeding on?
The deep sea equipment in the deep sea, that we get a glimpse of it, like having deep sea octopus nurseries that lay out of the sediments like stalks, and then the adults would, or the female would stick on there sometimes around with the brood until it hatched.
Sometimes they use coral reefs. Some hard substrate they find and make the most of it.
Yeah. And some deep sea corals. A colony of them, so it was not singletons.
Which is interesting and
It's-
not that common.
It's not that it was a second patch. The first patch was definitely living because we could see the tentacles coming out. This one we don't know. It could be a dead one. But in two places here we had several colony forming hard corals in one patch, which indicated that our idea of potentially finding some cold water corals on this or the dive before on the hard substrate was not far-fetched.
No, especially considering
we looked at the sediments around the hard substrate, you could see there was strong currents being able to supply nutrients along the edges. Whether it once was home to corals, and then the sedimentation and the no longer activeness of the volcano prevented either warmth or certain nutrients from reaching them. But it's certainly the habitat that would constitute harbouring.
Place.
Also
Wrong side.
possible.
Even
We
if
had-
you.
You know, we had this on the Ice Age RR cruise, right? We had a north and west rim of the caldera that was barren and bare, yet the current always went round the east and the south part, and there we were, there was literally hundreds.
Set of round mud balls.
Localized.
Yeah. I would like another purple. Just as a change of view. Ooh, another set of the corals and a live third.
Yeah.
I would indicate, say, somewhere you might have a hard coral. Reef. Yeah.
Large enemy.
Meeresboden. Meeresboden mit abgesunkenen Phytoplankton, weichen Sedimenten.
So viele.
Und du steuerst das. Und wie siehst du, dass da das Block kommt und dagegen fährst?
Large sponge.
Aber und der schaut auch ein bisschen nach vorne, wo er demnächst gegen wird. Das wird kommen.
The stock crinoids are definitely the most common type of animal on this dive that is visible, that is in the epifauna. Auf tiefen
Was
Tauchgang.
ist das für ein Ausschnitt? So 50 Zentimeter? 20.
Antibiotics we like dry chlorophyll.
Hier sieht man viele von diesen kleinen Schlammbällen. Sie müssen also und immer, wie James sagt, neben irgendwelchen Erhöhungen, wo jemand wohl drinne sitzt, den Schlamm frisst. tumbleweed of deep sea here, and a large eurid. I think James and I have reached the point of time where we can't sit on open fields. Ooh, what is the red? There's something red.
It's small, calendar. Really much expecting to see so much more of that.
I expected more. I had hoped for more variety.
Sponges and more other crabs.
Ah, big stone. What? We can pull this rock outcrop. That is unexpected. That is definitely unexpected. Wow.
Very
I need
interesting
to-
structure.
Yeah. Yes. Steffi said she will run them, so I've worked through the night tonight. We'll see. It's one of the rockier rides where you can see the tension meter go up and down, and
If we deploy on point, then we shouldn't even get this far via. Yes.
very good point, and we're going back to the deployment. Don't continue. We
Now we know what's there, that all the
Yes.
sample key will be usable there. Then it makes sense to make the most of
and we
find a weather window that is closing on us. So we may have to only do one out of our two EBSs. We will of course look, reevaluate when it comes to it.
But in the same way, we have reduced course in the number of multi-course.
Everyone has to be prepared to make sacrifices at sea.
Yep.
For the evening, that's 6:30 after dinner. Updates of the day and where to next, and if there's any important decisions to be made such as that. So everyone's informed and can put their cases forward and speak.
Yes, and that's Yes.